So, Om Anyana Timirandasya Yananjala Shalakaya Chakshulum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Say good day, everybody. Welcome. So this is a fun topic today. This is about creating your relationship with the divine. And what I love about this is I have lots of experience with failed relationships. so, so I'm very clear that the only reason we incarnate is to have a relationship with God. It's the only relationship that will fulfill you and bring you to the goals that you want. And, as Guruji says, don't try and be somebody else. Like, you don't have to be something else to have God's love. We've all been created unique and different. And that's exactly how we are supposed to be loved. But that includes being authentic. And so authentic means that what you're saying to yourself inside matches what you're saying to the world outside. And I had an interesting conversation yesterday with a gal I went to university with, and we haven't seen each other for decades. And she was so happy to see I'd become a Swami, because she said, I remember seeing you in the microbiology lab at the university. And she said, you looked like you had been squished into a shoe that didn't fit. She said, it looked like you were trying so hard to fit in and be normal. And it was like you were ready to explode. And I thought that's pretty observant for her to have spotted that probably before I even knew it. I was just trying so hard to find relationships with the people I was supposed to. And I've been married twice. I mean, I did the Grihista life to the limit. I tried every angle I could to find that perfect love. And I'm sure you've all gone through it. You've been watching, TV and movies and read books, and we all get these images in our mind of this perfect romance where somebody's going to know what we need before we ask for it, and bring us breakfast in bed and massage our feet, and whatever hallucination we had going on. And so of course we're all doomed, right? There's just no one can humanly match those needs that we had. And what I found so funny was that divine consciousness was already trying to give me little hints way back before I even acknowledged I was seeking. Because there's a song, I don't know if any of you know it, but it's a reggae song by Johnny Nash, and it's called I Can See Clearly Now the Rain Is Gone. And it's so funny because it was the theme song in a movie that was filmed here in Calgary about the Jamaican bobsled team. A bunch of Jamaicans decided to enter the Winter Olympics here in Calgary, and they'd never seen snow, and they entered the bobsled race. And so they became the favorite of the city. Everyone just cheered for them, even though they had no hope of winning. But their theme song was I Can See Clearly Now. And that had become my theme song. Every time I was driving away with my typewriter and my cat and my guitar after another relationship fell apart, that song came on the radio. And so it was like God was sort of laughing at me going, oh, so you tried again, huh? How'd that go? And of course it was always a disaster. And it wasn't until I started getting these conversations in my head, and literally when I met Guruji, I realized that consciousness had been embodied in him. And it was such a shock to realize that the whole world is actually looking for that, looking for an embodied form that has that consciousness, because he knows everything that we need. He knows everything we're going through. Like, all of the knowledge is there. So this is the only relationship that will not let you down. And Guruji recently did a YouTube video came up, and it's called True Friendship. And that's exactly what he said is, he is the only friend that will never disappoint you. that will stick with you no matter what is happening. And so, the question is, so how do we develop that? Or how do we recognize the friendship? It's like the friendship is always sitting here just waiting for us to look at them, to look at that consciousness. And it starts with conversations. And I remember I just, not even knowing anyone was listening, I would just start throwing temper tantrums sometimes. And I'd sort of go, well, what did you think was going to happen there? And then I would get an answer. And it was really clear to me that it wasn't me answering myself, that this was an answer that had come from somewhere else. And I realized that was, for me, that was prayer. I never liked the formal praying that was happening in churches. It was language I didn't use. I didn't like saying thee and thou and all this other stuff. I just liked being able to talk the way I talked. And what I experienced was, that's when I got answers. That's when that little voice started responding to me. And I remember the first time that I really had like a jolt of an answer was when I was first being transitioned out of India with the guru there to Guruji. There was this turmoil that lasted months, and it started with me I just went to Sri Lanka to renew my visa, which is what I did every 6 months, and I'd done that for years. Except this time, when I returned to India with the visa, I was refused entry, and nobody could tell me why that had happened. And as the security guard was walking me back to Sri Lankan Airlines to kick me out, I said, what did I do wrong? And he said, I don't know. He said, just try and come in. Maybe the guy was having a bad day. Why don't you try and come in through a different airport tomorrow? So I flew back to Sri Lanka, flew back to Mumbai this time, and had a long conversation with customs. And then they said, you're going back to Canada. And so by now I've paid for 4 airfares, and I'm a sannyas. So I put these things on it like an emergency credit card and then figure out how to pay them. Well, now I've got 4 flights, and they're telling me, now you have to fly to Canada. So this is a huge airfare. This is, in 2 hours notice. So there's no seat sale, there's no deals. It's like Air India, you have to get out. And I remember I was sitting on the floor with my laptop trying to, I was communicating with the desk, trying to book a flight. And I remember getting very stern with that voice. And I said, you better find a way to pay for all these flights if you're going to send me back to Canada. And I just kind of heard laughter, like, oh, she's so funny when she's upset. So, I flew back to Canada and got settled in at my mom's. I realized she needed help. She was still living at home, and she was in her 90s. And my brother came over one day with mail that he had saved for me. And this was mail that had shown up for years, and he just kept hanging on to it, thinking, well, I don't know what to do with it. And one of the envelopes was from when I worked in film. And the letter said, we heard you've stopped working. We have this huge pension fund for you. Where should we send it? And I had no idea that this pension fund was being collected. I'm sure it came off my check every time, but it's one of those things where you just don't even, you see all these deductions on your check, and you just figure, oh yeah, they're taking my money. And that pension fund paid off all 5 flights and gave me a nest egg so that when Guruji flew to Canada, I had money to fly and join him and pay my own way, which normally I wouldn't have had money to do that. And so, sometimes you have to take a stand with the divine and tell it that you're serious this time, it needs to help. But if you just keep, as Guruji said, listen to your heart, because what you will feel, you'll feel laughter sometimes if you're just throwing a fit. You'll just hear laughter like, oh, you need to calm down. But you also will feel waves of love that there's no explanation for it, right? You're not in love with a person, and yet you're feeling waves of love. And that's it. That's the relationship that you're striving for. And Guruji's had some amazing satsangs just about the whole relationship with him. And, you know, through him, we're talking the divine. So if you haven't accepted him as your guru, just understand that there is a consciousness that is existing in this body with you. And you can meet it incarnated in a person, but don't worry that even the guru is pushing you to find the connection inside of you. Like that relationship is already in you. And so he says here, realize the guru is your only true friend. He will never let you down. He alone knows the true value of friendship. And what do you do for a true friend? Anything. Do seva, help people, be selfless. So we tend to, in relationships, become selfish because it's like you're trying to protect your boundaries, right? You're trying to protect your own self so that the other person doesn't start controlling you too much or want more than you can give. You know, there's always a tug of war in human relationships. And the shift in context that has to happen for a relationship with the divine is that you become selfless, right? Because since the divine knows what you need, you don't have to demand it. Well, I did with the airfares, but he was going to do that anyway. And that's what I've learned is we don't have to ask for it. If we're constantly looking to see what somebody else needs or how can I help somebody else, that's what amplifies this relationship. And I experienced that at the ashram several times when everyone would be rushing to the front of the Navaratri tent or, you know, trying to get close to him during a celebration. And there'd just be something in my head would sort of say, look. And I would look and I would see somebody needing help, you know, either somebody on crutches or something happening that was outside of the event. And every time that I turned and helped and stopped rushing towards his form, right? Then later I would literally just turn around and have a flower thrown at my face or a candy would hit my head and it would be Guruji. So he is so aware of when you are doing things to help others because that helps him, right? The more people who are being taken care of in that circle, you know, the happier he is. And so say like doing seva of any description is helping him, even if it's, you know, a friend who's sick or having a hard time, and you go and you clean their bathroom. Like that makes God smile. Those are the things that bring you closer and closer to that divine consciousness inside of you. And so you have to monitor yourself. You have to, you know, every time you start feeling, oh, I'm not getting enough out of this, or oh, you know, I'm giving more than I should. Like any restrictions you're putting on yourself are going to harm you in the long run because the immensity of this relationship, it can't even be described. And that's what I found when I finally just said, I'm going to love God and I'm not going to, you know, chase people anymore. What happened was my relationships with people just became beautiful because the pressure was off of them. I wasn't expecting people to give me anything, right? I wasn't expecting them to phone and wish me happy birthday or remember, you know, to do this or that. Like we put so much pressure on other people demanding that they fulfill our needs. And I know families are, you know, historically bad at that, where, you know, you have to show up for Easter dinner today or I'm going to be mad at you, right? Like it's, we can't put that kind of pressure on people because everyone will let you down. And when I finally understood that, I stopped being mad at people. When I just acknowledged that nobody has the ability to know me well enough to do everything I want, but the divine does. So when I took the pressure off people, things just started being gifted to me from strangers, from unexpected sources. And that made me able to have great relationships with people because I could just enjoy them. right? It wasn't like, you can't be my friend if you don't do this and this and this for me. I can just enjoy people. And I think that's why I find it very easy to go into prisons and work with kids, because I just enjoy them. I'm not there to, expect anything from them or change them. I just go in and enjoy them. And that's all they need. That's usually all they need, is a friend who just comes in and helps them giggle. And, I tell them jokes, and that's all they need. And every time I leave the prison, I just feel waves of love falling on me. And that's your hug from the divine, right? That's this virtual relationship that you create. And Guruji had a lovely saying here. He said, in the chamber of one's heart is the most beautiful bedroom in the universe, where Sri Giridhari and all his bhaktas always sleep together. And when I read that, I literally picture that at night. Like I'm finally off the floor and off the ground. I actually sleep in a bed again, which is wonderful. And it's a white fluffy bed. And I literally picture myself laying down on a cloud, and all of us are on that cloud, right? It's Giridhari's bedroom, and all of the bhaktas are on that cloud. And I feel like we're a nest of puppies, right? And we just, no matter what we've gone through in the day, we all get to, lay down together and just go, that was a good day, or that was a hard day, but now I'm with everybody, right? So these virtual simulations that you create, you want to stay grounded, like Guruji warns us not to get all sort of flaky and ungrounded with your expectations. But when he gives you a statement like that, visualize it, right? Just take it into your heart and realize he is traveling with you all the time. And we all get to just crash together in like a big puppy litter at the end of the day, and everything will be okay. And ironically, I found that when I wasn't following my path, I had bizarre dreams. Like my sleep was very chaotic and busy, and things that didn't make sense. And once I got on my path, and the days got harder because the path will churn you, I slept the best of my life. So now that I'm sort of taking the challenges head on, and when I'm paying off karma, when I'm, going through something that will expand me, it often shakes you up. But as long as I'm hitting it head on, I sleep just amazing sleeps. And so that's become a barometer for me of knowing if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Because if your sleep is just sort of regurgitating the day and not making sense, you're in your underwear traveling on a city bus, like those are the dreams that show you maybe your day's not focused is right the way it should be. And so Guruji says on the guru-disciple relationship, it's the duty of the guru and the disciple to be loyal to each other, not only in one life, but in as many lives as necessary until the disciple reaches God. Those who are 100% loyal may be sure of final release and rise. So the fact that all of you are even watching this means that you have been with him life after life after life. This doesn't come easily, these associations. So now that we're at this state where we're so close to him, this is where you just hang on, right? This is like the final push to the finish line if we were in a relay race. And constantly remembering him and allowing him to purify you. And what I've experienced is, like, we've been given techniques that help purify you and get you closer. So your Atmakriya yoga, doing puja, doing Babaji Surya Namaskar, all of these are fine-tuning your body so that you can handle his energy field, because he holds back the energy that's going on. And the divine holds back energy if it thinks that too much will snap us, because we will literally snap like twigs if we're given more than we can handle. So we're constantly being watched to see if we're strengthening our nervous system with these sadhana, and if we're allowing ourselves to be purified. And some of you have probably gone through this where you'll take an initiation or you'll attend a darshan or something, and then you become really sick. And that sickness is a purification. It's the high energy that's been sent to you is making you rise up, and everything that holds you back has to leave your body. So you usually have like flu-like symptoms, or you'll have a high fever. And it's nothing to worry about. You're under the care of a guru. So he is shaking out the luggage that you don't need anymore. And I didn't know this the first time I went to the Kumbh Mela. The Kumbh Mela is this huge celebration, 70 million people, all, celebrating the divine. So it's a spectacular event to go to, but it's also the highest energy field on the planet. When you get all the masters and all the avatars and all the devotees in one place, the energy is through the roof. And the organizers are brilliant. They always have medical units set up everywhere because they know people will all of a sudden just be purging, right? Throwing up, diarrhea, the whole messy thing, because your body is desperately trying to get to this higher energy field, and your biology is not letting it happen. And the first time I was at Nasik Kumbh Mela, and everybody was all ready to go on the parade and down to the river, and we had to start at 2 a.m. because we were in a lineup of millions. So we had a specific time slot where we had to be to start walking, because our time at the river was this much, and everyone had to get in and out fast so that you didn't get trampled by the next group. And I went to the first one, and that's what started the purification, right? All of a sudden, my whole body just went into frenzy. And so the second night when we were supposed to go, I was just curled up in the fetal position on the floor of the temple, and I heard everyone march by me with their banners and everything. And I just felt like my whole body was going to explode. And I ran to the washroom tent, and I was shaking so badly. And I had a tough talk with the divine again. And I said, "This isn't fair. Like, why are you doing this to me? It's too much." And I blacked out. And when I came to, I was upside down behind the toilet, between the toilet and the wall. So somehow I'd arched up off the toilet and come down head first behind it. And it was like God had grabbed me by the leg and gone like this and threw me against the wall. And I could hear all this laughter going on. I was like, it's not funny. And I had to slide sideways along the wall into the garbage cans to get out from under. Like, it's like he dropped me down by my heels behind the toilet. So I crawled into a shower stall and cleaned myself up, and crawled back into the tent just as everyone was coming back. And I was immediately, the doctor saw me and got me into a car and got me to the hospital. And all they did was they had seen this over and over again. They, put an IV in with like electrolytes and fluids and a couple other magical things. And within an hour, I was back in the tent dancing and partying with everybody. So, it's incomprehensible, like, to the regular medical profession or to people fresh off the street, if they don't understand that to attain God's love, you have to go through a trial by fire. You have to be purified. You have to be loyal, and you have to listen to the teachings. Like, the closest way, the best way to understand your lover is to understand his teachings, how he's viewing the world and how he's telling you to view the world. And as he says, don't worship me the way you want to worship me the way I want you to. Right? So some people have these magical ways that they've just invented in their head for, oh, I'm just going to go out in nature and God will know I love him. And to a degree, that's right. But if you're seriously trying to cross the finish line. If you really want this to be your last birth and you don't want to mess around anymore, you don't want any more failed dreams and hopes, then you get yourself regimented and you follow the instructions you're being given, because the explosion you will experience, the love and the fulfillment of dreams is unbelievable. I can't tell you enough. People wonder how I survive, right? I'm saying, yes, I have nothing. And yet I live in beautiful places and everything keeps working out. People offer me cars and things and stuff because they're worried because I don't have enough stuff. and I don't need it anymore, because I used to collect stuff to try and make me happy and it didn't. And now that I've renounced everything, lovely things show up when I need them. People bring me flowers, all kinds of things get delivered to me without asking. And it's because that divine lover constantly knows what you need and when you need it. So never stop the conversation. Just, remember the first time you really were swept up by somebody. You thought about them all the time. You included them in all your conversations and all your decisions. So you just need to shift that to maybe something that's not quite as tangible. This isn't someone who's in the room with you all the time, but keep the mindset that he is in the room with you and that this is the lover of all lovers. And as Guruji says, the lover is the highest status of a yogi. So even in the hierarchy of yogis, the lover of God is considered the highest state, because then you don't need to ask for anything and everything is given to you. So as Guruji said, we must transform our lower nature to divine in order to have this relationship. And it's like we're the small seed that becomes a banyan tree. Our effort breaks the shell of the seed, and then he lets us grow. And I don't know if you've seen these massive banyan trees, but they take up like a neighborhood, and it comes from a tiny, tiny seed. So our effort breaks the shell, and then he can take over for us and turn us into this spectacular tree. And the last thing I'm just going to remind you of before we open to questions, we have the Rahasya mantras as devotees. So there's the 3 mantras that we're told to chant every day, and the Charma Sloka is pretty much Guruji's favorite. It's from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 66. And it's Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyo Moksha Yishamima Shuchaha. Abandon all dharmas and take refuge in me alone. I will deliver you from all sin and evil. Do not grieve. And I just find that such a penetrating statement. Do not grieve. How many times have we grieved in our lives? And it's like you just hang on to him and the days of grieving are over. Guruji's commentary on that verse is, if one has true love and relies fully on the Lord, if one has this relationship with God, thinks of him, trusts him, has deep reverence for him, whether one is walking, sleeping, or talking, if the mind is always absorbed in the love of the Lord, fully aware of his closeness, performing whatever one's duty is, Bhagavan values this love, this surrender, more than anything else, even more than Dharma. So he's basically saying we all have our Dharma, our divine duty, and that's, taking care of family or, working in a hospital, whatever your Dharma is, we have to do it. But if you're always picturing that you're doing it for him, that's pretty much it. You've succeeded. That is the goal of the spiritual life, is to realize everything we do is for the divine and none of it's for us. And every time we help somebody else, it's helping him. It's a good question because I think it's such an automatic response in us, we don't realize we're doing it. That, you know, you see somebody and you just categorize them and label them and sort of put them in a little box. And Guruji's telling us not to do it. And some advice he gave my son once was, he said, don't take what isn't yours. And my son sort of said, you mean like stuff? And he said, no, like spiritually. He said, don't take on things that aren't yours. And I think we have a habit of labeling people to sort of push them away from us, thinking that otherwise they'll harm us. Like if we don't label people and get them in the right slot, they could surprise us and attack us when we least expect it. You know, so I think it's probably a survival instinct from the animal kingdom, even, of, you know, and evaluating situations as they come up. Is this dangerous? Is it safe? Is this person safe? Are they harmful? And what he's saying, leave that to him. He's the only one that knows what these people are really like, and he will steer you away from ones that could harm you, and he will bring the ones to you that will help. So when we realize it's not up to us, like the survival need has been taken over by him, and that he will make sure, you know, everyone is sort of kept in their own pattern without you having to judge them, without you having to decide, is this, can I get connected to this person or not, or should I walk past them? Because what I've found is some of the most bizarre looking people, I get this little signal, go talk to that one. And, you know, and my mind wouldn't have ever said that to me, but because it's like that short little burst that when the divine talks to you, it's usually very few words. It's usually just a go there, you know, do this. And I've had amazing things happen from talking to the strangest people in the room. So I think that's why he's saying, be careful not to judge, because we can't judge. We don't know. And I remember I was with when I got back to Calgary from the States, and I was with some very wealthy women, and they were, what were they doing? They were all trying to criticize someone for who they were with. And they looked at me and they're sort of like, aren't you going to judge that person? And I was like, I married a homeless Black man. I have no right to judge anybody about anything. Like, you know, they're so busy, you know, it looks good on paper, but you know, this is wrong and that's wrong. And I was like, hey, like, you know, I've learned that I cannot judge anybody because it's nonsensical. So that's where you become a witness. You know, Guruji always says, remember, you're looking through these eyes with him. You're driving this vehicle and you're looking through these eyes. And so just be a witness, watch what's happening without feeling the need to put a label on it or judge it. And the more you witness life, and instead of being swept up by it, the easier it gets not to judge anybody. Because what you'll see is, it's like, oh, so the movie today is these people doing these things, right? It's all just movies. We're all just in these grand leelas, and just enjoy it. You know, we don't feel we have to judge movie characters. So the same way, don't judge the people that come into your field of view during the day. I had that question for years when I first started on the path. And then when I was in India, I was told that malas also offer protection, and that when a mala breaks, it's often because it took a psychic blow for you. That like there was some negativity being sent your way, and the mala actually took it and breaks. And I was surprised, because when I look back, I was in some dangerous situations, and it made sense to me that the mala, you know, would have reacted to an energy that was being sent at me and didn't end up hurting me, but the mala took it. And that's the only explanation I've ever heard about malas breaking. And I haven't heard what Guruji says about it. So this was, you know, something from India that because I kept, you know, tying them back together and explode again, and I tie it back together. So I think it has to do with energy. Have you tried neuro-linguistic programming at all, NLP?
No.
So basically, what they realized is what we say becomes our reality. So if you say, I don't know where I'm going to live tomorrow, then that becomes your reality, that you don't know where. So what they say is you be very careful how you speak, because those words become reality down the road. And when I was trained with that in India, what they told us to do was, instead of going from, you know, praying, oh, please let me have a place to live, you know, always let me have a safe place to live, that instead of going from praying to waiting to praying a little more and worrying to getting it and being grateful, they say you jump right to being grateful. So you just say, thank you for always giving me the perfect place to live. And you speak that to yourself over and over, and then that becomes the reality in your brain. So you get rid of the worrying, the praying, the begging. You jump through all those steps, and you just, if the thought comes in, I don't know where I'm going to live after this job, just negate it and go, thank you for always finding me the perfect place to stay. And it is, it's breaking a habit. And I remember when I was homeless with my son in California, in 10 years, we moved 36 times. Like, I couldn't catch a break. I'd get to a place and I'd think, oh, for sure this will work, and it wouldn't work, right? It was just a nightmare. And then it got to the point where I stopped worrying. The universe forced me to get out of the worry, right? It wouldn't let me sink down roots. But every place we went to was lovely, you know, things worked out, and then something would happen and we'd get moved to the next place and the next place. And I think it happened to train me to always know I would be taken care of, right? Because I never got to live somewhere for 10 years and think, oh, this is home. It's like, nope, never happened. But, you know, my son and I were talking about it. He was like, we lived on boats and in teepees. And he said, all my friends envy me because I had this childhood, artist lofts, like we were yoga retreats. And it was a kaleidoscope of life. And now when I look back and I look at my friends who've been in the same house for 30 years, and it's like they're growing mold, right? They're so set in their ways that it would take a bomb to get them out of that rut. So just keep being grateful that you have this amazing lifestyle and that you're always taken care of, and say it out loud. And what I did is, since I worried all the time, I put notes, post-it notes on mirrors. So when I brushed my teeth, this note was at eye level, and I made myself say it out loud 3 times before I brushed my teeth. And then I finally broke the habit of being scared and worrying. And I just reprogrammed my mind, because your mind was programmed at such a young age that you've got to break that pattern.
Yeah.
But you can. Like, it just takes relentless not buying into the fear. And, you know, as Guruji said, whenever that thought comes in, see him in your heart and just hear him saying, it's going to be okay, right? I got you. It's going to be okay. And people think it's harder than it is. Like, forgiveness, like you say, when you finally just go, I'm sorry. Like, if I really have hurt you, I'm sorry. And then the whole game has to change, right? It's hard to describe to a scientist or someone who's logical, but it has to change. As soon as you, as Guruji says, change you first, and then the world changes. And I don't know, some of you had heard me talk a bit about I had that conversation with a young mom in an abused women's shelter, and she was going. I did a meditation with the group, and then she talked to me after, and she was going to court the next day. Her husband was on trial for trying to kill her, and she was terrified of him, and she was afraid she wouldn't be able to testify, because if he was looking at her in the room, she would just freeze and be quiet, because that's how he had controlled her. So I told her about this, changing yourself, forgiving him, and she might have been an abusive husband in a past life, which is why she would have had to go through this in this life. So we had that conversation, and she was up all night, having, doing like NLP, saying, I forgive him, I'm sorry, just having that conversation to nobody. Just, she was in the bathroom, her kids were asleep in the room. And the next time I saw her, she was just radiant. And apparently she stayed up all night doing this forgiveness, went to court, and he walked into the courtroom. And before anything could start, he said, I want to change my plea to guilty. And his lawyer didn't know this was going to happen. Nobody knew it was going to happen. And he turned and looked at her and he said, I'm so sorry, I need help. And like the whole place fell apart, because it was going to be this classic abused woman testifying against her husband trial. And it wasn't that at all. It was over instantly. He asked for help. His family came and offered help, and they hadn't been offering help. Like, she was in an abused shelter because no one would give her money or help her. So same thing, it changed overnight. So these teachings Guruji gives us aren't just clouds. They aren't just lovely thoughts that float by. These are hardcore tools for how to live. And when you apply them in your life, then you get a hug from your sister.
Yes. I think it has to be like really sincere from the heart, and then it works. It's
Yes. Okay, let's close with a Om Shanti, okay? Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Om Namo